Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Just to You podcast. My name is Eric Nicole, and I'm your host. If you are a first time listener, welcome to the conversation. And if you're a regular, I'm honored that you've decided to join me for another episode. The Just to You podcast is centered around a network of conversations which are meant to connect us, to inspire us, to find our own confidence, our own voice, and to live our own truth. And who knows, we might even learn a little something new that ultimately allows us to live in the sweet spot that I like to call the Just Do You space of being. Each week, I have the privilege of sitting down for unscripted conversations with friends, family, colleagues, community leaders, and influencers that all share their own personal journeys. I hope that you enjoy our time together as much as I have. We are certainly going to laugh, and yes, we might even cry a little. But in the end, we're going to know that we're not alone during our life's journey. So, are you ready? Great, let's do this. Welcome to the conversation. All right, everyone, welcome to today's episode. I am really excited to be with you today, and I'm equally excited about my guest. I have been a huge fan for many months. I follow him on Instagram and through his newsletters and through a lot of his work, and I think you're really going to enjoy today's conversation. So I'm just going to jump right in and introduce Court Vox. Hi, Court.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This has been a long time coming for me. You've been on my top 10 list for a long time, and I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. Thank you to you and your team.
Yeah,
I'm going to just briefly introduce you to our listeners today, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. There's a lot to talk about. But for our listeners today, like I said, met Court on Instagram. I'm a huge follower and have listened to several of his podcasts. And he was recently on a podcast that is hosted by our mutual friend, Nathan Serrato. And through that conversation, it left me, as I was driving up to Los Angeles to get to an appointment, left me with a lot of questions in my own life about myself, my body, my intimacy, my relationship to intimacy, my relationship to others, my relationship to sex, and a lot of other things. And so I'm really excited to have you on Court today to talk about that. But for our listeners, Court is a somatic wellness and embodiment coach. He's an educator. He's a founder based in Los Angeles of an incredible program. And he has been featured in a multitude of magazines and online platforms, and it's a really interesting approach to what we're going to talk about today. But he works with people one-on-one. He has group coaching programs. He has workshops and retreats. I'm sure they are done all over the world. He is incredibly knowledgeable in helping people get connected to themselves. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today, Court. So thank you for being here again.
sure. Thank you.
Of course. Can you give us just a little intro? I love to find out a little bit before we jump into the meat of the conversation about my guest, about what young Court was like. Where were you
hmm
born? Siblings, family? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada. I had a younger sister who passed a couple years ago. We were very close. We're 2 years apart. I remember myself as a very curious child, very sexual child. I was always very erotically curious. So it's no surprise to me that I'm in this profession now. But there was a period of time where I went dark, if you
Mhm.
will. But as a kid, I was so vibrant. I loved to dance and sing. I was a professional singer for 15 years in
Wow.
bands. I went to UCLA for musical theater. So music and kind of movement and voice has always been a really big part of my life. I loved animals. I had a cat named Crystal. I had this really awesome photo with this cat who's a black cat. And it's like such a telling photo. Like you could just see, oh, this is a gay child. I've always had really white hair, like white.
Mhm.
I was born, came out of the womb with like just a full head of white hair.
Wow.
And this picture, I got slicked back white hair and I'm like with my cat and I'm kind
We all
of,
have one of those poses. Maybe
it's
not with
very,
a cat, but
it's
we all
very
have one of those
like, it's
pictures.
very Siegfried and Roy with,
Yeah.
I don't have a white tiger, but I have a black cat. Yeah, I was a really happy child. Like
Mhm.
my sister and I had a very full kind of like fantasy life. We'd play a lot outside and we would dig in the dirt. My mom would kind of leave us out there together and
Mhm.
we would make forts and all
Mhm.
kinds of, yeah, we had a very kind of fantastical life in our backyard.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When you mentioned a little bit about that kind of early on years of being sexually in tune or erotically in tune, tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, and my earliest kind of sexual memory with someone else was with my neighbor when I was 4. and he was also 4. And we used to suck each other's dicks on the side of my house.
Mhm.
And we would say, I almost have a tickle. So we were having orgasm. We weren't ejaculating, but we were having orgasm in our body,
Mhm.
which is cool. And that was a memory I suppressed for a long time, but it's come back to me and it's such a fun
Mhm.
memory. But yeah, that was kind of like that is my earliest like
Mhm.
erotic memory. I also have a memory of being like, I think it was about 5 or 6, and I was at a friend's house, another sister and brother. And I said, "You guys want to play doctor?" And they said, "What's doctor?" And I said, "You're going to take all your clothes off and then I'm going to examine you." And they're like, "I think I'm going to ask my dad." And I was like,
No.
"Don't
Yeah.
ask your dad." I already knew at that point it was a little precocious. And they did ask their dad, and they came back and they were like, "So my dad said no, and your mom is coming to pick you
You up.
up." Yeah.
What's interesting about that is I think you're not unique, for lack of a
No.
better term, in that I think that happens a lot. I think what's interesting about that experience, because I had experiences like that at a very young age. I don't know that I was 4 or 5, but at a young age, and yet we instantly fall into that conversation of shame. Or that
Mm,
internal conversation of shame. It's like, I did something wrong, especially if the dad was called and your mom comes to pick you up. And I often have mentioned this in a multitude of podcasts when we talk about experiences in our youth and those very formative years, that it's when we start to make decisions about who we are in our adulthood or how we're going to live our lives. And I think, I don't know if that was your experience back then or if you can recall that kind of moment. I can remember it specifically when I was attracted to one of my schoolmates in elementary school, very young elementary
mhm,
school. Kids would make fun of that or you would hear things. And I instantly internalized that I could never express my attraction for my friend. I could never, and
mhm.
at the time it wasn't sexual. I didn't
Yeah.
think. Turned that later in high school, turned that completely. But in those elementary school years, I didn't understand it because there was no education, there was no
Mhm.
conversation about it. And I remember feeling that shame and guilt. So I just wondered if that was your experience or was it just moving on to the next and it
Yeah,
transitioned?
I want to name something. So it is an
Yeah.
internal, like it's an internalized shame
Yes.
that we take on, but it comes from external sources, right? And so
Correct.
just understanding we're 4 or 5 years old and we're already receiving messages about it's not okay to be affectionate with other boys. It's not okay to
Yeah.
show love for other boys. And that's so young, right? And
Hmm.
so imagining that messaging starts from that age. And so much of the work that I am doing with people is not about fixing, it's actually about remembering. It's like
Sure.
going back to that part of yourself that's like your essence, which is like my 4 year old that was like super curious and innocent and wanting to explore and open and joyful and experimental.
Hmm.
Those are all really beautiful qualities to have as a human being, but they're really beautiful qualities to have as a lover.
Hmm.
To come from a place of fluidity, experimentation, curiosity, instead of rigidity. And I'm not going there because I don't do that, or I don't like that, or I don't want that, when we don't really know. And the question becomes, do you not want that? Do you not like that because somebody told you it's not cool or it's not okay? Or is it because somatically you're just a hard no in your body? And so a lot of the explorations I'm doing with clients is that it's
Hmm.
I'm presenting what I like to call like a smorgasbord or a buffet of so many things that are available in the erotic realms and experimenting with those and picking and choosing which ones resonate and
Hmm.
be able to do it when people are working with me privately or on retreat with my team, to be able to work with people who A, know what they're doing from a skilled
Hmm.
perspective, and then B, can actually hold from an
Hmm.
emotional capacity is really huge.
Hmm.
And it's like I'm also preparing people to be that person in other relationships.
Sure.
It's like a reflection back of, wow, I was able to open so much here. I feel so safe
Hmm.
here. I feel so
Hmm.
held. I feel so seen. I feel so met. It's like, wonderful. How can
Hmm.
you be that person for someone else? So this lineage of what you've learned here doesn't end with you. It actually keeps going.
So interesting. I totally agree. It's what I find so almost backwards is that we're having those conversations many times in our adulthood, 40s, 50s. beyond, as opposed to having them back in our formative years when we could actually benefit from those conversations so much more. And I know that's not necessarily a reality. The reality is we're now in our adult years and we need to navigate our way through this. I think I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but talking about intimacy between friends and how even ashamed we are or nervous we are to reach out and hold someone's hand or to embrace someone that maybe need comforting. I know several people in my life that are like, oh, I could never show that kind of affection to my male friend. It's easy to do with the girls or girls with girls. It's just interesting to find that out. So when I was thinking back about childhood experiences, excuse me, and through school and all of that, and wanting so much to just, I don't know if that word was cuddle, but just be close with one of my best friends because there was such a connection there. And it was this beautiful connection. And he has passed away many years ago. And I've always thought about him and wondered what that would have been like had we been free to just express
Mhm.
that. We were both gay at the time. We weren't out. It's obviously high school. We did kind of experiment, and that was the kind of fun and exciting part together. But it was never a moment of just being able to be free. There was always this background conversation of, oh, our parents can't find out, or our friends can't find out, or
Mhm.
all of those things. And we carry that with us. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that really then ripples through so many parts of your life, not just your relationships, but with intimate relationships, but your relationships at work and how you relate to other people. So in what you're saying, it really does, though, the work begins with the individual getting connected to themselves, getting connected to their bodies, loving themselves. Is that correct? Or is it different for every one of your clients?
So I want to put a circle around that and come back to it.
Yeah.
The starting with self, but I want to
Okay.
kind of address something you've spoken about, which
Uh-huh.
I would name as erotic friendship or erotic brotherhood, which I name so much on my retreats, and it's like a surprise byproduct that people don't expect.
Mm,
Is they come for self-exploration and they leave feeling really immense connection with the other men that they've been
mhm,
in process with in a way that's not just heart-centered, right?
mm,
Because so much of self-help work and whatever you want to call it is very much from the chest up or from the throat up. It's very heady or it's very heart-centered. But there's so many practitioners that are afraid to include sexuality or to
mhm,
include the genitals as part of a holistic body because of the risk that's involved. And there's shadow there. There's shadow in that. And really what I'm doing with my work is saying, I recognize the shadow. We're bringing that into a light space. And the body is holistic, right? The body is the heart, it is the spirit, it is the mind, it is also the sexual, erotic parts of ourselves. So that's a whole body. And
mhm,
that's what we work on in my personal work and also on my retreats. I'm going to tell a little story. On a retreat, I had this man come to me, and it was like the second to last day, and he said, I'm feeling so young. I have a huge crush on this other man, and I don't want to ruin my friendship because I just love him so much, and I find myself avoiding him when he walks
mm,
in the room, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do with it. It feels like this really young part of myself. And the way he had approached it is he wanted to get rid of it. And I said, no. I
mm,
said, what a gift. What a gift that at this age you have a crush. Can you allow yourself to have a crush?
mm,
And maybe just tell him, I have a crush on you. And I don't want or need it to go any further than that. But I love you
mm,
so much. I respect you. I think you're funny. I think you're sexy. And I just want to be around you. And I was like, could you say that? And imagine if he said that to you. Would you want to hear that? And he was like, yeah. There's this piece of we've become so afraid of
mm,
attachment.
mhm,
Attachment's become like a dirty word. I talk about this a lot with people who are asking me questions about all this, and they're like, are you afraid people get attached to you? What if they don't attach to me? Then what? What if they don't love me? Or what if they don't fall in love with the other men at the retreat? What if we never love or attach to anybody else? And are we having a human experience? For me, it's no. Like those are human necessities. and gifts of humanity, to be able to attach to one another, to be able to feel love for
Mm.
and from another human. So those are really big gifts. And I actually encourage people sometimes, right? They're like, I haven't fallen in love, or I haven't had a crush on somebody for a long time. And I said, in this 7-day arc or in this 3-day arc, you're allowed to have a crush on me if you want, if it
Mm.
comes for you. And then at the end of it, we can say goodbye and we can close it. But what if you could allow yourself that? And I think this is a question and inquiry that I had for myself last year, early last year. Continue to ask myself, can I allow myself to fall in love again? Like
Mm.
really fall in love, like in a place that kind of feels like my feet could come out from under me. And it's been a process, and what a gift I have given myself to actually do that. And I won't get into all of that, but it is a process of stepping into what I'd call yellow spaces, which feel scratchy and crunchy and uncomfortable and unknown. But the piece that's on the other side of that, I want that. I want to know what that feels like. And so I'm going to stay here for a little bit until it's not so yellow, becomes a little more green. And then I step further into yellow places and feel into how I can trust the spaces and the people that I am in relationship with to step in even more. Or I have to step back. The piece that you're talking about, starting with yourself. So I'm going to say yes, and there's this kind of misnomer that you have to have your shit figured out as yourself before you move into relationship with others. And I actually think that's not completely true.
Mm.
There's so much that you learn about yourself by being in relationship with others, whether it's a platonic relationship, whether it's a lovership, whether it's a full-on partnership or marriage. That person is a fucking mirror for you. And if
Mm.
you are paying attention,
Yes.
if you are paying attention and looking at that relationship as a source for your growth, you will find richness there. And so to say, I'm going to work on myself until I'm baked enough to be in a relationship, I just don't believe in.
Mm.
It's like, no, when you find that person that you feel you are willing to risk falling in love for, do it. The biggest loss that you could have is that you didn't fall in love,
Yeah.
or that you got hurt. And I think that piece of feeling like I could get hurt here and I'm not going to step in because of that. But you're also risking something greater, which is you're keeping yourself from feeling immense love and
Yeah.
affection. And
Yeah.
for me, like, I'm in a place in my life where that's a bigger risk. That's a
Yeah.
bigger risk if I don't allow myself to fall in love, if I don't allow myself to love others, and also allow people to love me. And that's been a big part of my work too, as being a public person, being a person that's standing at the front of the room. And there's a lot of admiration and a lot of compliments that also come with the other stuff.
Other side of it, I'm sure.
But there's a lot of admiration and love come my way. And it has taken me the years that I've been doing this to be like, okay, yeah, I deserve that. I'm going to allow more of that instead of pushing it away and denying people the gift of loving me.
I think people will find that really fascinating and a little bit triggering, maybe, is to get
Good.
into a conversation. Exactly, which is why we're having this conversation today. No, seriously. Just in the last 3 minutes, my head's spinning about my own life. But
Mhm.
I think people start to have conversations about themselves, right? We have this inner dialogue. And I think we sometimes are afraid to even speak out loud to our closest friends or confidant. That's why I really believe in coaches and coaching and all the work that you do, because sometimes it takes somebody else to have us speak our truth or to speak truthfully. One of the things that you said that I think was really interesting is I find in granting yourself the space to be loved is coupled, for me at least, with the yeah, but or the yes, and a lot of times. And it's in the work that I've been doing is catching myself in that yeah, but. I'm allowing myself to be loved, but, and then the conditions that follow after that.
Mhm.
and it's got to be the right guy. It can't be hurt, this, that, and the other. And all of those things that just throw up all these roadblocks, which I'm sure you hear a lot of. And I think many of us, if not all of us, have those internal conversations until we start to really work with someone on getting us through. And I'm not saying that not everybody can do it on their own,
Yeah.
but I believe that it is much more impactful and I think sticks when you work with someone that allows you to see. And when you said that the relationship is a mirror to you, I just got the chills because it's so true. It's so true. And we were sharing before we jumped on the podcast about, I recently shared about my divorce. And I
Mhm.
had someone ask me after they listened to the episode, they're like, how can you be so positive? How could you be so forgiving? And I said, because I don't regret a minute of that relationship
Mhm.
and a minute of that marriage. Not exactly thrilled with the divorce, but I learned so much about myself through that relationship. It was beautiful. Memories were
Mhm.
amazing. And I want to carry that with me and carry those memories with me. Was I hurt? Yeah. Am I sad? Yeah. Do I miss the intimacy and the sex and the relationship? Absolutely. But where I turned the corner after listening to not only you and Nathan, but also with one of your other podcasts, was I had to turn that corner and say, yeah, but I need to allow people to love me. And
Mhm.
that was super powerful. So when you said it again on this episode, I got the chills because it was something that I really heard loud and clear. Can you do me a favor or do us a
Mhm.
favor?
Yeah.
And because I'm sure a lot of people are listening don't know what somatic is, but could you
Mhm.
give a little bit of description about somatic coaching and the difference between that and maybe traditional therapy and kind of the
Yeah.
work that you do?
Yeah. So somatic means of the body, and it's not just the corporal body, but it's talking about the holistic body of mind, spirit, um,
Mhm.
mind, spirit, body. So much of the Western world has compartmentalized and separated the psychology of the brain with the corporal body and the emotional body. And this work is acknowledging that they are the same. They are in relationship with each other. And a lot of my clients have done a ton of psychological work. We've been in therapy for a lot of years. They've done all kinds of stuff. And so by the time they come to me, they're like, I'm really tired of just talking about this. And
Mhm.
the work that I'm doing, we still do talk. It's like we're processing things through verbal processing, but we're also processing things through movement, through breath, through sound, through touch, through placement of awareness. So it's very experiential learning. It's experience mixed with, okay, we're going to talk about the experience and what was the experience? How are you integrating it? How are you metabolizing this? It's if you've ever seen somebody public speak and they're in like have you ever taken like a public speaking class and somebody stands up and they start to speak and they're like, and I want to tell you about my story and this, and they have no idea that they are just rolling over their words. And as an onlooker, you go, let's take a pause for a minute. Should we take a breath together? Are you aware that you are speeding through what you're saying? And are you aware that your leg is shaking? Are you aware that your hand
Mm,
has this tick? And it's like sometimes people are not. They're not aware of their own patterns. And when I'm working with people, it's in 3 day containers. I don't do hour sessions. I don't do 3 hour
yeah.
sessions. It's 3 days. And what's possible in that, A, is intimacy. When people are like, I want to explore intimacy, and I'm like, great, I do 3 days. And they're like, what about a session? And I'm like, what are we going to do in an hour? We're
Yeah.
going to create intimacy in an hour? Maybe there's like a form of intimacy, but intimacy takes on a lot of different aspects,
Right.
and it takes time to build that. What was I getting at? I was
Well,
talking about something.
I'll, I'll transition a little bit of a
Okay.
question. No, because it's perfect transition to my question because and you can correct me on my terminology, but I often feel just for myself, and I see this sometimes in others, that we exist outside of our body a lot of times. And so for me, I find that quite often that I'm up here outside of my physical self, and it's two completely different spaces. And
Yeah, it can be.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you talk about the awareness for me, what that triggers is, am I aware that I have that tick? Am I aware that I'm rambling? I think the practice of that is what really makes the impact, is becoming aware.
Yeah, it's becoming aware and also making different choices.
Okay,
And
say more about
also
that.
and also having different choices. I could say to you, you're running over your words, you have this tick in your foot and your hand, you're aware of it. Now, that's step one. You have an
Mhm.
awareness of it. And then the second piece is, okay, I'm going to consciously slow down. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to do something with my hand. I'm going to center myself so my nervous system is in a grounded place instead of frazzled, right? And what do I need in order for me to be in a grounded place as opposed to dysregulated? Is it breath? Is it noticing my spatial awareness? Is it just taking a minute to notice the sensations in my body, to presence myself? Is it asking for connection in a space? Even just like here with you of saying, I'm a little nervous this morning. Will you take a breath with me? I would love to just ground with you so that I can speak from a place that feels a little more centered than fishing around. Those are tools. And
Mhm.
again, being able to make different choices involves having different choices. And that's where a lot of my coaching comes in is like offering choices.
Do you
Yeah.
mind just explaining that just a little bit more? Could you give an example of what that would be? When you say, what are our choices? What does that mean?
Yeah. So my work is predominantly in the erotic realms and also in intimacy, but it has a lot to do with erotic relationships, intimate interpersonal relationships.
Mhm.
And what that looks like is arming people with a really hefty toy box. And this is not like sex toy. This is
Mhm.
like a sort of dashboard, if you will.
Sure.
These are all the things that I really love. These are my communication skills. This is my curiosity tool belt. These are little frameworks of play and fantasy explorations that I could pull in that I know really turn me on.
Mhm.
So when I'm in an erotic situation, or even just and when I say erotic, I'm not always talking about sex. I could be having a really erotic conversation with my partner at dinner that feels very alive, very turned on. And we might be fully clothed in a restaurant, touching each other and talking, but having this very full erotic experience. And it's because I have toys in my toy box, tools in my tool belt to go, I know little things that turn him on. And I know how to turn him on a way that allows for a pleasure loop to come back to me. And he knows what pleasures me and what turns me on. And so it's like this pleasure loop that takes place.
Mhm.
And it's a practice.
But
It's a
this
practice.
is where the rubber hits the road for me though, because and I'm so glad you said that because we don't know necessarily that we can have an erotic conversation and not have it turn into a full-blown sex act.
That's something, the partnership that I'm in now is something that's so beautiful and sexy is we can have a really hot makeout session,
Yeah.
and just be like, we're going to leave it with that. And just like stew in that.
Yeah.
Or he'll be like washing the dishes and we'll have a little, what I call like a little snack,
A
like an
moment.
erotic snack.
A
And
moment.
then,
Yeah.
and then we have to go somewhere and
Yeah.
we're going to put that away. But there's a turn on there. There's a
Mhm.
point of connection that happened in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And maybe our cocks didn't come out at all, but there's a full body aliveness
Yeah.
in our mind, spirit, and body,
Yeah.
and a point of connection and intimacy that we shared that like it carries us through the day in a way.
Sure.
I think about that and it's like, oof. And yeah,
Does
even,
that
yeah,
Just go ahead. No, go ahead.
even in like texts and talking about like how to incorporate like modern technology, texts and video chats and sending sexy photos and videos. And I travel a lot. And it's like, how do we keep it alive while I'm traveling? And it's have to make it a practice, right? You could just be like,
Mhm.
I'm tired. I'm not ready
Mhm.
for this, or it's late here. But how to keep that erotic connection alive, even when you're
Hmm.
not in the same room, again, takes effort. It takes some effort.
Hmm.
And I work with a lot of couples that have been married for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And they're like trying to figure out how to get that spark back. And it does take effort. It does take
Hmm.
effort. It's not something that's just you can expect like it's gonna, and it's not gonna be the same as when you met some hot thing on the street,
Sure.
because there's a level of novelty in that
Yeah.
new person that it's just so unknown. And there are ways to create that in your partnership of 20 and 30 years.
Sure.
And
Well,
also, yeah, also acknowledge that you are not the same person
yeah.
as you were when you got married.
Sure. And I think even in relationships that aren't 20 years, I'll use my own. It's a couple years in, you've got to take the time and have the ability to communicate about those things. And when you were talking about those erotic moments together before you had to go somewhere, that was missing a lot. And I think back about my own relationships. And so it does take work, but it also takes a willingness, I think, to be open and to communicate and to play a little. And I've seen a lot of people lose that playfulness inside of that relationship and lose
Yeah.
that ability to be curious about exploring new things with a partner. Do you find that I've often asked this question, and I asked this of Michelle, do you find that it's mostly are Americans just kind of pent up and in this kind of inner dialogue about sexuality and freedom and exploring and all of that? Or is it a human being kind of nature? Do you see that with your international work? I'm just curious.
It's a human being thing.
Okay.
But there's certain communities and certain pockets of the world that are more sex positive and more open to different types of relationships. And San
Hmm.
Francisco being a hub, Berlin being another hub. And even within those communities, there's still these kind of core themes that kind of people struggle with. You
Sure.
know, even if you're like the kinkiest person ever and you're in like a polycule relationship and you've got three partners, and there's still a lot of effort that goes into holding those relationships and managing everyone's needs and emotions. It actually takes a, a very mature person to have those types of relationships, to have a full handle on your emotional capabilities, also your time. I'm very polyamorous in my heart, and I don't have a lot of time on my hands. And so it's
Mm.
like when I am meeting someone other than my primary partner, I'm like, look, I just don't have time. Would love to
Yeah.
cultivate something that's
Yeah.
heart-centered with you, but it's just probably not going to happen. I'm just being realistic with you
Sure.
about what my availability is.
For
So
sure.
yeah, I would say that's a big like thing to
But that's
think
also
about.
But it's also being adult and it's being responsible. You're being responsible not only for you, but you're also being responsible for that other person by being honest and being transparent, as opposed to, let's just say, ghosting or let's just say not communicating. I think that's really important. I find current circumstances very difficult to navigate with the lack of communication and connection. When you're trying to date, you're trying to meet people, you're trying to build that first couple moments of intimacy with someone. It's very difficult these days. I struggle with it and in this dating world. And I've used a dating coach and I have my people that are there to guide me and to give me great coaching to navigate through life. But it's hard sometimes. It really is hard because I'm a people person. This online
Mhm.
dating thing and the disconnection of all that is super difficult. I don't live in a part of town that's frequented. I have to get in the car and drive down to Hillcrest to be able to be in that environment. So it's not always easy, but I'm forcing myself to do that in order to build those connections with my community. It's so
Mhm.
important. But I think what's also really interesting is you mentioned this that we have gone into this space where there are so many different opportunities for relationship. There's your monogamy,
Mhm.
your ethical non-monogamy, your polyamorous relationship. So navigating that, I remember back in college, you were gay or straight. That's what it was. It was there wasn't this dynamic of all of these opportunities. And it took me a while to get to a place where I could be a little less judgmental about those relationships that didn't fall into that
Mhm.
spot of what I am looking for, which is this ethical monogamous relationship. That comes with its own set of challenges. So do you find that interesting to navigate in when people come to work with you that they're just lost in this, where do I fit in and how do I navigate this new space?
Yeah, some people are very consciously trying to open their relationships
Mhm.
and dealing with, obstacles,
Mm.
and some of it, specifically within primary couples, there's power dynamics at play, and a lot of times they're not conscious power dynamics. And again, this is like where my kind of background in shadow work comes in really real
Mhm.
handy. Shadow work is basically our unconscious making choices for us because of a need that we have of feeling safe or feeling secure or whatever it is. And we have a behavior or something that's triggering us that's happening over and over again. We're not really that aware of that it's happening.
Mm.
Sometimes, again, when I'm with people for these long periods of time, I'm like, are you aware that you keep saying this over again? Are you aware that this relationship, there's a pattern in this relationship? And if you are going to have a different kind of relationship, not better, but different, because you're telling me you want a different kind of relationship, you're going to have to make different choices. And here's this awareness of this pattern it's here. It's right.
Mm.
Can you see it? Oh,
Mhm.
wow. I see it. Wow. And again, we have so many patterns, not just in a relationship, but
Sure.
the habits that we have and the things that really trigger us, and to be able to know what they are. Again, step number one. Number two is, okay, how do I make different choices?
Hmm.
And what are my choices?
Yeah. And you talked about the yellow space earlier and that kind of uncomfortable, kind of crunchy space. Do you find that most people just simply want to avoid that, or do they come with a willingness to get in that crunchy space and have those conversations?
Yeah, I think if you're coming to work with me, that's what we're doing.
You
I'm
have no
really,
choice to be in the crunchy space with
no,
you.
I think they're already in the crunchy space
Yeah.
by stepping in to do the work, right? That it's interesting because last summer I went and worked with somebody for 3 days in Seattle. And it was this question mark of how is it for people to come to work with me in Los Angeles? And I made this long trek. I took a plane and a bus, and I walked to this space every day. And just like the nervousness and excitement about showing up to learn something new, to learn a new skill set, to be really present with who I am and how I show up. It was a really good practice for me to understand, like, oh, this is good. This is fun. I love this. I'm so glad I'm offering this to people, of to be able to come as a student and understand I'm going to learn shit that I have no idea what I'm going to learn. Because I could tell you all the things that we're going to do, and it still wouldn't make sense to you.
Sure.
I could explain to you what we do in retreat and what we do in retreat, and you'd just be like, I don't get it.
That's why I'm not asking you
Yeah, and it's
to
why I don't
explain that.
share. I actually
Yeah.
don't share with
Yeah.
people like the details
Hmm.
because it's too challenging. There's some things that you cannot explain or put into words, and words sometimes fail us as we're explaining experience. Linear words, that's why we have poetry, that's why we have music, that's why we have dance, is
Hmm.
because these are artistic expressions of feeling and emotion. And sometimes the linear story it's not as conducive or as meaningful as the art that we're able to create. If we think
Hmm.
about sex as an artistic expression, as a piece of art that we're creating with each other, it could be fucking anything. Art is subjective. I could throw some paint on the wall and be like, that's my painting.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be literal. And to be able to come in that space is so different than we're rigid and are mapping out of something. You
Yeah.
know,
Seriously, yeah, so many people I know talk about that rigidity of sex, and they've got a plan, it's scheduled, it's this, the other, there's process, and it's never spontaneous, and it's never. But if you look at it like that perspective of it's a piece of art or artistic expression, how cool could that be to just be able to create with each other and to spend that time?
spontaneity, I think, is overrated. Specifically, I think it's overrated in general.
Okay.
I specifically with couples with busy lives and schedules, even as an artist. the artist has a practice of stepping into the studio with their canvas and their paints
Hmm.
and their smocks and covering the room. Like they have prepared. That is not spontaneous. What happens with all your tools in that space is spontaneous.
Okay. Makes sense. Mhm.
You have to create space and you have to create the space that you want to create in. And if you're not doing that, the chances of it happen get slimmer and slimmer. People are like, I used to have spontaneous sex when I was young. And I said, tell me about that. When I would go out Thursday night and I would go out and I'd meet somebody and we'd go home. And I was like, great. How did you prepare for that? I got my hair cut and I cleaned out and like I put perfume on and I put my fancy clothes on. I'm like, okay, so prepared. You prepared for spontaneity, which is not that spontaneous. You went to a space where
Yeah.
you knew there was a chance you would meet someone.
Uh-huh.
So you planned.
Uh-huh.
You planned, friend.
Yeah.
So it's just acknowledging that spontaneity happens when a specific spontaneity that we
Hmm.
want to happen, if we want to co-create something special, it does take planning. It does take effort. It does take, yeah, it takes a
Yeah.
little schedule.
Take the schedule.
Yeah.
It's interesting. In one of Nathan's podcasts, he talked to somebody who talked about scheduling time to converse about conflict. And when I first heard that, I was
Yeah.
like, what? And then I was like, oh my God, I love that. Like she was talking about giving yourself 30 minutes to resolve the conflict. And I was just like, that's epic. I love it.
Mhm.
But it's so perfect about what you said about creating that space. That's an interesting transition for me to ask this question because it's something that's been on my mind quite a bit. And I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it comes up a lot in your practice, our relationship to our own bodies and how we
Mhm.
feel about our vessel, if you will. Does that play a big part in a lot of the work that you do with your clients that come with that either body shame or their
Yeah.
uncomfortableness with their own bodies?
Yeah. It's if you are always helicoptering over yourself and I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too white, I'm too black, I'm too old, I'm just
Mm,
too fill in the blank. We
mm,
all have something that we're aware of and ashamed of, whatever it is. It takes us away from presence, takes us a place away from us being in the moment. If I'm in a place of performance for you,
yeah.
I'm performing sex. I'm trying to be sexy. I'm trying to look hot. I'm trying to arch my back in a certain way or make a pose. I'm not present with what's real for me. And then we're having disconnected sex, or at least I am.
Yeah.
As I am. You might
Right.
be connected to your own body and having a great time with me as a plaything,
Yeah.
but it's the connection that people are desiring when they're coming to work with me is that thing of the world moves away. The issues of how I see my body in comparison to others in a hierarchy point of way disappears. It is no
Hmm.
longer important. My ego is gone. What you do for work and who you are in the world, it's just not important. I want to know you on a soul level. And to get to that place involves being present. What's interesting, it's an interesting thing that happens is, and I'll speak from an I place here. When I become so present in my own sensation in my body and so present with the connective tissue of touch and breath and sound with my partner, I go into complete trance state, which is such a mind fuck. We're going to be so present with each other. What we create is something that's completely otherworldly. And I can say that to you. And if you haven't had that experience, it's kind of hard to name,
Hmm.
but that's what people are after. Because at
Hmm.
some point, a lot of us have felt that. And they're
Hmm.
like, I want that. And sometimes we get it as like a fluke. It happens, but we don't quite know how we got there. And
Hmm.
so we're always like chasing that
Yeah.
because it's such an incredible feeling. So to be able to have tools to reach those states of consciousness with
Hmm.
yourself and with a partner,
Hmm.
you have the capacity to create magic for yourself.
Hmm. I read in one of the spots I was reading about you, I think you use the term mental intimacy. What is that?
Mm. Did I use the term mental intimacy?
Yes. But if you don't remember, that's okay.
Yeah.
I can edit that out.
There are people that are sapiosexual, which their turn on is through the brain. So
That's what it
for,
was. Actually, I remember that. That was the article. You were talking about sapiosexuality.
yeah, so it's
Remember that?
to be able to connect with someone who can be smart with me, who can meet me in my banter, who can, and it's not like a smartness around like cultural things and art,
Sure.
although that plays a part. It's something different. It's like I don't have to work so hard to be in conversation with you. It's this playful dance that takes
Mm,
place with our wordsmithing that also has a I can't like a something that's between us that's fluid,
mm,
like an
mm.
energetic fluidity that takes place starts here. Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like we need to maybe rewrite the dictionary a little bit and re-educate people on definitions of intimacy, of erotic, a lot of those words that we've used throughout this conversation. There comes with it an assumption, perhaps. This is just speaking from off my
Yeah.
mind. Do you find that? Because when you say erotic play with someone, it automatically goes to maybe some kink video you've seen or something, and it goes to the extreme. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. You talk about physical touch, it goes to the extreme. You mentioned other words, and people go to the end result as opposed to maybe the process of it. And I think as I look at my own kind of connection to my own body, the reason I asked about the body shaming the weight is I've been through that myself. I think a lot of us have. And when I'm in shape and I'm eating, I feel really good and I've got that energy and I'm not eating poorly in the things that make me ill, I feel sexier. I feel
Hmm.
that I can feel my body where when I'm abusing it and not doing it correctly in the things that I know that I should do, I don't feel well, so I don't feel sexy. I don't feel desirable. I don't feel the pleasure like I would, and that's been something that I've really been paying attention to is my own relationship to my own body, to my own intimacy, to my own touch, and to feel that connection to me. Because like I said earlier, sometimes I don't feel that. I feel like I'm over here and the body's
Hmm.
over here. So I think what's really great about working with someone like you is being able to identify where we might be making assumptions or maybe some different definitions of the words that you use that will allow us to be more open, to be more expressive, to be more willing to be a little bit more adventurous or a little more curious. I think it's
Yeah.
really cool. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I just to speak to that a little bit, I think there's a question around societal acceptability of certain
Mm,
bodies and
mm,
who gets to be sexy
mhm,
and who gets to have sex and be desirable. And that's an unlearning,
mm,
right? So am I only worthy of pleasure and sex when I'm fit? Or am I worthy of pleasure and sex and affection and love always as a benchmark, not because it's something I have to work for? And that is an unlearning that
mhm,
is really important and valuable because your lovability, your desirability, your sex appeal is not dependent on your weight. And that's a tricky one to unwind. But I have definitely been with humans who are not the stereotypical beauty standard, as clients and as lovers who are so embodied
mhm,
and so fucking sexy
mhm,
and connected. And at no point did they ever apologize for their body. At no point did I say, you are to this or to that. It was not important. It was not in the
mhm,
room.
mhm,
Because if it was in the room, it would have detracted from the connection that we were having. And so that's an unlearning that we have to process with ourselves. Of
mhm.
am I only attracted to this body type because the world says this is an attractive body?
Sure.
Am I only valuable when I have a six pack and I'm at 12% body fat? I say these things, and these are things that I have to work on for myself. And It's not to say that it's not easier for me when I'm eating the way that nourishes my body better, when I'm
Sure.
exercising. But there is a question mark for me, just from an eye place, and for everyone of, can I always be worthy of pleasure and love and
Hmm.
affection, regardless of the body expression that I'm presenting to the world?
Yeah, it's powerful. I have two final questions for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I could talk to you all day. And I'm being very respectful of your time.
Thank
I
you.
hope you'll come. I hope you'll come back. Um, so, I'm gonna ask these in order. Is there something that has surprised you the most after your completion of working with someone in particular? Was there something that surprised you about what they got about themselves or realized about themselves through their work with you?
Sometimes I don't get immediate feedback from
Hmm.
people. My relationships with clients a lot of times span over 2, 3 years, but they come in pockets. So I'll work with a client for 3 days and then I won't hear from them for a whole year. And then they'll show up and say, I'd love to come back and do a retreat, or
Hmm.
I'm feeling like I'd like to do a little more work. Can I come back and do another private? And so then I get to see what's changed for them, and also where they're feeling a place of, oh, I've gotten this far, I'd like to go further, right? I'm feeling like I'm meeting this obstacle and I'd like to show up for it more or differently. I think on retreat, what happens in group space that is just so incredible and beautiful and inspiring to witness and be a part of is erotic brotherhood. To see men come together in such a vulnerable space, to co-create together, to touch one another, to support each other, to be each other's cheerleaders and advocates. And that has a lineage way beyond me. It affects their relationships with their partners, with their children, with their families, in their work lives. I've had men make drastic changes to their lives, leave partnerships that are not serving them anymore, sell homes, move across the country,
Sure.
and then sometimes it's more subtle. It's, oh, your body is different in terms of your shoulders are back now, and you're
Hmm.
walking with confidence in a room. When you speak, it's direct, and you're actually commanding presence as opposed to apologizing and asking to be seen. So sometimes the work is not so glaring, it's more subtle. And sometimes clients will be like, people have been asking me like what work I had done. And they're like, I feel good.
Feel
I
different.
feel different. And it shows. I also work with women in a retreat company called Back to the
Mm-hmm.
Body.
Yeah.
And I wish we could do like a before and after
Hmm.
photo of people's faces, because people's faces look different after.
Sure. Sure.
It's a relaxed confidence and joy that's present. And when they show up, they're tense and confined. And then to be able to express on such a full body
Hmm.
level is so freeing. It
Yeah.
relaxes the muscles in the face
Of the
and
face. Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So
I haven't experienced it with your group, but I've seen it I do a lot of breath work and I saw it the other day. I was in a brand new sound bath healing session here in Sanitas and never met the people in the room. And gal walked in and just and after that session was over, she was just alive. She had just released something, whatever that was for her. And I think there's a lot of modalities that will allow people to just release that and be aware of it. And the struggle is not walking back out onto the street, getting in your car, getting on your phone, getting back to work, getting back in your relationship and falling back into those old traps. I'm going to say this before I ask my last question. I'm so grateful that there are people in this world, I call them angels, who land gently on our shoulders to wake us up so that we don't miss the rest of our lives was a quote that I saw a long time ago and I use it a lot. And you're one of those people, Court. The work that you do for people and allowing people to be their true selves and to find that space is really remarkable because it's making the world a better place. And right now we need more people walking around this earth connected, committed, happy. And so I thank you for the work that you're doing. I look forward to following you more. We're going to make sure that our listeners have access to not only your site, but the group of women that you work with so that they can explore. I encourage people to check you out, to take a look at the work that you do. And if it resonates and it fits with you, take that next step and reach out and have a conversation with Court, because you will definitely see the benefit. So thank you for being who you are in the world.
Thank you.
For us. You're welcome. And thank you for being here today. My last question for you is this. If you could bust one myth about sex or intimacy forever, what would it be?
We need to start asking different questions that are not like solo, right? This is going to be a one size fits all for everybody.
Sure.
The questions need to be skilled in a way that allows for expansion and allows for fluidity in different expressions and different humans, because that's what makes us human. That's what makes us unique and special, is that we all have different things that turn us on, different things that allow us to be alive. And so that's the myth that I would like to bust.
That's exactly why I asked you the question, because I knew that was the answer I was going to get from you. I knew it was coming. So thank you for being so frank and not just forcing an answer to that question.
I'd love to invite you to my retreat that's coming up. It's called Connect. It's in December in Joshua Tree.
Oh, it sounds great.
It's a 4-day event for LGBTQ men. And I think you'd get a lot out of it. I
think it'd be great. And I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for being here and having the conversation. I'm so grateful to you. So grateful to Nathan for introducing me to you, even though it was online. I feel like I've got a good friend and another soldier in this world we live in. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much.
Talk soon.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on today's episode. I hope our conversation resonated with you like it did me, and I cannot wait to sit down with you all again next week. Remember to subscribe to the Just You podcast on your favorite platform so you can make sure not to miss a new episode, which drop every Thursday. If you like what you hear, you can easily share the podcast and episode directly with your friends. And if you would, rate us and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram at JustDoYouPod. As you go out into the world today, remember to just do you. All right, talk next week.